All right, back to it now. Listen, as I told you off the top here, Joe Biden and the Democrats did not get the bump out of the trial for Donald Trump that they were hoping for, counting on, really. Donald Trump picked up, $55 million, just shy of that in the first 24 hours. The fundraising frenzy went on all through the weekend. I don't know what the final numbers are. I've heard 80 million, 90 million. We'll find out at some point. But as a result of that, I'm also looking at the polling out of North Carolina, for example, where the lead there has bumped to 12 points in a 5-person race, meaning they've got to do something. And then suddenly we hear that Joe Biden's going to sign an executive order to help close the border, something he says he does not have the power to do. He's been saying it for months, and all of a sudden here it is because it's a political emergency. Todd Bensman is a national security fellow for the Center for Immigration Studies. He's the senior man there, and the author of Overrun, How Joe Biden Unleashed the Greatest Border Crisis in U.S. History. He joins me now to explore this more. Todd, thank you for taking the time today.
Sure, anytime, yeah. It's true, the Biden administration's desperate right now, particularly on the immigration issue, illegal immigration crisis, the mass migration crisis, biggest in U.S. history going on at the border. Everybody hates it on both sides of the aisle. Got to get those numbers down. He's going to produce, he's going to sign a executive order today. The thing to know about that is that the immigrants that are crossing illegally are doing it because we are letting them in. That's it. We're releasing them. And the whole world knows it. All their neighbors, relatives, friends are seeing it on social media. Wow, they let me in. I'm in. I'm in Chicago the day after I crossed illegally. The executive order, as far as I can see, has a loophole in it, a clause in it that says all you have to do is say, I fear return to Mexico. That's all you got to say. And you're going to be released into the country. That's according to the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, early reporting on what the executive order is. We're going to close. So really
then what you're saying is it's just for show. It has no teeth in it. Oh, I'm afraid to go back. And here's the other argument. Some would say that the people that come here from China or countries in the middle of Africa, we can't send back, but we can. The law allows us to ship them back to Mexico. We don't enforce the laws that are on the books already. But this is a political emergency for the Biden team because nothing they do is helping to stop the fact that Donald Trump has a persistent and consistent lead in the polls in the swing states. We saw North Carolina's numbers. We're going to see what numbers come out from other swing states. This is a problem for them. So they're doing something that they've been saying consistently they cannot do, which is an executive order to stem the flow. But what you're telling me is it's smoke and mirrors.
I mean, listen, all they have to do to shut all of this down is use Trump's remain in Mexico policy. Put them back, and it's been upheld by all the courts, all the way to the Supreme Court. It is sitting there ready to go. It is locked and loaded, but they won't do it. If they were really serious, they would just use remain in Mexico, and it would shut the whole thing down. Border Patrol ordered to grab migrant families and individuals, whoever, everybody, and take them to the bridge and put them back over and say, you're free to claim asylum. Just wait it out over there for 5 years. The problem is nobody wants to do that. None of these foreign nationals want to do that. And so they would stay home or go away. That is really the only real thing that has teeth in it. It's been sitting there for like 2 years, fully vetted by all the courts, ready to go. Just do that. But
when we see these cases, though, that and I spoke about this, haven't talked about Lake and Riley in a while, haven't talked about Ruby Garcia in a while, but even if the big papers, the New York Times and the Washington Post, ignore the border, if MSNBC and CNN try to tell you that it's okay and Alejandro Mayorkas says, oh, it's secure, Americans know better. And all politics is local, and local news covers these things. We saw the 2 New York police officers, NYPD officers, shot here by an illegal here this week. We see the stories of organized gangs breaking into fancy houses all over the country because they have a plan to come and rob Americans blind. We see the illegals trying to make their way onto Marine bases. All of these things get covered locally. So the national news media can try to paint it however they want with ruby glasses. But the fact of the matter is the rose-colored glasses are not keeping people in the dark, are they?
That's right. The damage is done. The 6 million people in 36 months are already in the country, and everybody feels it and sees it. You can't look away anymore. It's in your neighborhood. The political damage is done. Unfortunately, the real damage is done too, because cops are getting shot and beaten, and people are being robbed, and there's scams and theft and robbery and thievery all over the place. You can't miss it. Not to mention that it's breaking the bank. These cities are being driven toward bankruptcy by this. Public investments in places like Chicago are being diverted from black communities to illegal immigrants that they let in at the border, and they know it. Believe me, they know it. And that's why the administration is polling so terribly on this issue.
Well, the two big issues, as you know, are Bidenomics, which they won't talk about anymore because it's completely toxic to them, and the border, which they try to avoid, but because of a political emergency, they have to talk about it. But I believe, listen, we're 5 months from the election, Todd. It's too little too late. I mean, people know what's going on, and your number is 6 million, but I've heard people estimate the number of people who have come into this country is twice that since Joe Biden took office. The problem is nobody knows for sure. You got too many gotaways, too many, it's like a sieve. It's a sieve, so who knows how many people came in? It's an estimate. It's all a guess, isn't it?
Yeah, to a large extent, nobody really knows. I mean, when I say 6 million, that's what we know are actually in, and that's just in the last 36 months. The border is still open. The numbers are down. The numbers are down for another political reason. The Biden administration went to Mexico and asked them to deploy 35,000 troops to round them up in most areas across from Texas. And that really has moved. The point about that is that it's a short-term political move that they had in their quiver of arrows all along. They could have had Mexico do what Trump did. Finally, Biden did it, and they've got the numbers a little bit down. But the interior of the country is already saturated.
Sure.
By
and I want to ask you something real quickly before we run out of time here on all that. Claudia Sheinbaum, elected as Mexico's first woman president. She's going to continue these bad policies. She's going to continue to be a far-left socialist, and these bad policy people will flow through. Of course, you can't criticize her because she's the first woman Mexican to be the president of Mexico, so therefore she's not to be criticized because she's a woman, which makes no sense, but that's the policy that we're going to have going forward. Is anything going to change? We have about 20 seconds here. Is anything going to change?
In my opinion, no. She is a protege of Lopez Obrador. For years and years, she has been an acolyte. She does whatever he says, whatever his party does, she's going to do. Nobody expects any major changes on Mexico's immigration.
Right. Except you're not allowed to criticize. The first woman in Mexican history, as if that's the most critical thing. Get the book, Overrun. How Joe Biden unleashed the greatest border crisis in U.S. history. For those of you on television, you can see it right there. Overrun by Todd Bensman. Todd, always appreciate your input. We'll see if this executive order, what it contains when it's finally signed, and we'll get the details, and we'll have you back, sir. Thank you.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Really appreciate it.